So I'm going to do a demonstration and show you guys how to mix any color in the world with oil paint using a simple palette. And I've got 3 colors that I'm going to match, but it's the same workflow no matter what color in the world you're trying to mix. You can use this very same workflow and it'll always get you to the color, and you can match any color in the world. Now, before I start, I've got another video called How to Mix Colors, which is on drawmixpaint.com, and it explains how to mix colors in the context of doing a painting. And it talks about color groups and making steps and some other things. But I want to keep it real simple in this video and just show you just how easy it is to match any color with oil paint. Okay, so let's start with this color that's a dirty reddish color, and I'm going to match that color. Now, if you look at the color wheel here, I have yellow, green, blue, purple, red, and orange. Okay, disregard the brown and the white for now. But that is the direction that we can push the color. In other words, we can push it in the yellow direction, the green direction, the blue, the purple, the red, or the orange direction. We can also adjust the value, meaning the lightness or the darkness. Okay, you can have a very lightish red, or you can have a much darker blood red. And they can both be equally intense in red, but the value is different. Value means the brightness or the lightness. Okay, so take a look at this color wheel. There's a couple ways that we can adjust the lightness or the brightness. Okay, so the first thing I just said is there's 6 questions: yellow, green, blue, purple, red, orange, to adjust the color. And now to adjust the value, the brightness, we have couple ways we can do that, or actually 4 ways. Blue and brown will darken a color. Yellow and white will lighten a color. Okay, so by using just these 5 colors, yellow, and this is cadmium yellow, burnt umber, pyrrole-rubine, which is a Geneva color, but permanent alizarin crimson or alizarin crimson will work in its place, white, titanium white, and French ultramarine blue. Now, let's start. The first thing to understand is if you don't know what to do and you're using this workflow, and especially if you're learning to mix colors for the first time or are unfamiliar with this workflow here, what I would suggest is don't worry too much about trying to, it's always starting that really gets people. They say, well, I don't even know where to begin. Well, if you don't know where to begin and you're starting out and you have no instinct for color mixing, just take a little bit of everything and mix it up in a pile. And that's going to give you a starting point to begin this workflow, and you're going to be able to eventually match any color in the world. So let me show you just how easy this is. All right, so let's start off, and I'm going to sort of, if I was using all my experience, I might grab a few colors and get pretty close to that. But I'm going to intentionally just miss it by a mile, and in the process be able to fix it and show you how we can get there. Okay, so I just randomly took about equal amounts of every color just to give myself something, and it wasn't equal amounts, but what I mean is I didn't make any deliberate effort to try to mix this color, even though I've gotten maybe closer than I wanted to. But let's start there. Okay, I've mixed up a random color. I'm trying to mix this color here. And first thing I'm going to do, and this is the workflow again, is I want to adjust the value. I want to get my brightness and the lightness in range. There's no point going crazy and worrying about the color until your value's sort of close. So if I compare these two, it just so happens that the value is just about equal. You can hardly tell a difference. Okay? Now, I'm going to adjust this because I need to be able to explain things to you. So I'm just going to add some black, and black is blue and brown, and you can make warm blacks by mixing more burnt umber into your black, and you can make cooler blacks by mixing more French ultramarine into your black. But I've basically just added brown and blue, and there was no logic in that. I'm just trying to tone this down so I can give you a better lesson. All right, so now our value is off. So let's say that this was the first color that you mixed, and it was way off. So now I look at these two, and obviously mine is a good bit darker than this color. Now, so the first thing I'm going to have to deal with is lightening this color up. And there's only two ways to do that, and that's the beauty of only using 5 colors. You don't have to overthink it. It's not as confusing when you have like 5 different ways that you can lighten a color. There's only 2 ways, yellow or white. And conveniently, they're on the opposite side of the color wheel. So now, as I lighten this up, when I make a decision to lighten this up, and this, you don't have to do this, you're still going to match the color, but let's try to kind of push it in the direction of what we've got here. So even though my value is wrong here, you can see mine's a good bit darker. Let's compare the color, and this isn't critical, but just in general, I would say mine's this paint color here that I'm trying to match is slightly more in the sort of orangey direction. So maybe it needs some more orange, which is down here on the yellow side of the color wheel. So I need to lighten this up, and I'm going to lighten it up with yellow, and I may need some white, but I'm just going to use yellow because I can see that this is more orangey, which has more yellow in it. It's down here on the color wheel. So let's lighten it up with yellow. Now if you didn't know and you were confused and you added yellow and white, you're still going to get there. But I'm just going to lighten it up with just yellow. And what I'm doing here, and this is the workflow, is I'm focusing on the value first. I'm not going to go crazy worrying about the color until my value is the same, and that's the important thing. So now if we compare those two, it's still a good bit too dark. So let's lighten it up a lot. And this is going to end up pushing it way too yellow. I know from experience, but let's just do it anyway, because maybe you don't know that. So now as you can see, it's really getting very yellow. And that may not be the direction we want to go in, but it's okay. We're still going to get there. All right, so our objective is to lighten this up until the value matches, that the lightness and brightness is about the same as this color. So we're still getting it lighter, but it needs to go even more. But now, let's just look at the color while we're doing this. And we have to now decide, do I want to lighten this even more with more yellow or with some white? Well, at this point, it's starting to this looks more yellowish than this does, and maybe this color looks more purplish. And those are the 6 questions. So I'm not worrying too much about the color now, but I'm not going to add more yellow because this is already too yellow. So I'll add some white to lighten it up. And again, our objective is to get this color to have the same value as this color. And I'm kind of intentionally messing it up a little bit so I can explain. All right, so now we have lightened this color up a good bit. Now let's compare it. Now mine's too light, so I overshot and I made it too light. So now I need to bring it back down and make it darker. Again, I'm worrying about the value first and less about the color. But now that we need to darken it down, because I've made it too light, what color do I need to add to it? I only have 2 choices, brown or blue. Okay, red will also darken a color, but we usually don't use it for that purpose. So brown or blue is going to darken this down. Now what direction do I want to push it? It's kind of a purpley, reddish, maybe more reddish color. This is a little bit more not as red, so I need to push it in the red direction. So that's burnt umber, as you can see on the color wheel. So I'm just going to add some burnt umber. My objective is to darken this color down. And if your pile ever gets too big, and I do encourage you to mix, plenty of paint, but if your pile gets out of control, go ahead and just remove some of it and just put it aside, and you can use it later. But, okay, so we're trying to darken this down, and let's see how far we've got. So now our value is about the same, as you can see. Value is real close. If it's hard to tell, that's close enough. So now that we've got the value the same, and that was the workflow, that was step number 1, is concentrate on the value, on the darkness, and we've got a pretty good match on the value. So now we're going to adjust the color. And what is the difference between these two? If I say which one is more red, and there's 6 questions we can ask when we're adjusting the color. Which one is more red? Which one is more orange? Which one is more yellow? Which one is more green? Which one is more blue? Or which one is more purple? And in this case, if I say which one is more red, it's obvious that this color that we're trying to mix is more red. So we're simply going to add some red to the color. Now, whenever you add color, sometimes you will adjust the value at the same time. In other words, by adding that red, it might have darkened my color down a little bit. Now, I've just brought in some of this lighter color, so I might be okay. But the point is that whenever you add a color, you always want to go back and make sure your value's in check. And if it isn't right, in other words, if I've now messed, but it is the same, as you can see. But if you do get your value off by adding other colors, well, you need to go back and focus on getting your value first before you try to judge the color. That's the very important point that I want you to understand, is focus on the value first. Okay, so here we can see the value is very similar. It's almost identical as far as I can tell. But I would say, if I say to you, which one is more red, I still think that our target color is still a little bit more red, so we're just going to keep on and add a little bit more red to our color to push it further in the red direction. And it's as simple as that, and you can always get there with these 5 colors and this simple color wheel. It will always get you there. There are some colors that we can't mix with these 5 colors, and those are extreme colors or very, very bright colors, and I'll talk about those later. You need special tubes of color to mix those intense greens and oranges and all the other intense colors that you can find. But these colors will pretty much mix 99% of the colors that you see in the world around you. And we'll deal with those power colors in a minute. But let's go back. So what have we done? We added some more red. Now let's compare. And now I'm asking myself, which one is more red? Well, they're getting real close, but I've changed my value, as you can see. This color is very slightly darker, very slight. But we need to lighten this up a little bit. Now notice, I would say that my color is maybe less purple than this color. I think this color is very slightly more purplish, although it's hard to say. But I'm going to add just a little bit of white because white's over here on the purple side. And that'll kick my value back up so it's not darker. And let's think about the color again. Still a little bit too dark and maybe slightly too not red enough. So a little bit of red, teeny bit of white, and we should be about there. And I'm not going to go too crazy trying to match it perfectly, but that's about it right there. Okay, maybe the value is slightly off, but good enough. All right, so now let's try another color. Okay, so let's mix this gray color here. Now, it may be obvious to many of you that this has a lot of white in it. But grays, there are 2 colors that are a little bit, that might throw people, and that is if you just, and again, let me go back and say that when I think about color, I always recommend that my students think about color in these 3 ways. Which is more yellow, which is more red, which is more blue, and of course, which is more purple, which is more orange, and which is more green. And those are the 6 questions. But if you look at a color and you say, mine looks more gray, that simply means mine looks more blue. Okay, so just remember that. If you see gray and you say, mine looks more gray or that looks more gray, that simply means that's more blue. The other one is brown. If you look at a color and you can't tell what the difference is, but yours looks more brown, that simply means it's more reddish orange. Okay, so those are 2 things that when people will look at a gray and they don't think that they're looking at blue, but when you see gray, that's blue, and when you see a real brownish color, that's like a dirty orange. All right, so there is gray, which is sort of a blue. And if I start and I say, okay, here's blue, and again, we're going to focus on value first, and let's just overshoot. So if that's sort of a bluish color, let's go ahead and make a really strong bluish color that's about the same value. Okay, so which one is darker? Mine's maybe slightly darker. Mine is clearly to blue. So this is a helpful thing to know. If you're ever trying to mix a color, always overshoot it first. You know, you can still, and when I say overshoot it, I mean I'm making it even stronger than it needs to be. So if I'm mixing a dirty orange, mix a pure orange, and then dirty it down by adding a little bit of blue, which is the opposite of orange. So let me show you what I mean. So this is clearly a stronger blue than this gray here. And again, gray means blue, and mine is clearly too blue. So the opposite of blue is orange. So I'll take a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red, and it's going to tone that blue right down because it's the opposite of orange. Orange is the opposite of blue. And I've just put yellow and red in it, which is orange. Okay, so you can see that the blue is now less intense, and my color is too dark. Should be focusing on my value first here. Should have added some white with that yellow and red, although the yellow might have lightened it up a little bit. But focusing on value first, thinking about color as I decide what to adjust. But if you're wrong and you add the wrong color, you're still going to get there, and that's the important point. So you can do this exercise even if you don't have a clue what you're doing. You can just go through the workflow and mix any color in the world. So now the value is getting real close, but as you can see, mine is too blue. So this is less blue, and so we'll add a little bit of yellow, again, adding orange, which is the opposite of blue, a little bit of red, and that's going to take that blue out of the color and tone it down some more. Okay, so now mine is too blue, it's too dark, so let's adjust the value first because that's our number one priority. So I'm adding white, which I'm going to need some yellow too. It's already too blue, but I've got to keep it in the grays, which is blue and white. All right, so now, and I'm not mixing enough color. I should have a bigger pile than that, but just for this demonstration. So this is too purple, and I need to add some more purple to my color. So I will add some red and some blue, and that's certainly going to dark it down, and mine's already a little bit too dark, so I'm going to have to add some white too. The reason I'm using white instead of yellow is because white is over here on the purple side. Simple as that. So I've just added some red, probably way too much. And now we can see that mine is way too purple. And so the opposite of purple is yellow. So now we're going to go back in the other direction. And I'm just showing you how even if you don't know what you're doing, you can still get there. So now let's see what we've got. Now mine is still too purple, or too reddish purple maybe. Mine looks obviously too red. So the opposite of red is green. So let's add some yellow, some blue, but really primarily yellow because it's kind of purpley. And the yellow is going to get rid of that purple. Okay, so now let's see what we've got. Okay, so now if you're confused, what do I do now? This is the perfect time to do the 6 questions. Which one is more red? I would say mine is slightly more red. Let's keep going. Which one is more orange? I would say mine is more orange. Then this one is less orange. So if mine is more orangey reddish, well, the opposite of orangey reddish is bluish purple. So blue, or rather orangey red, I'm sorry, I'm doing that wrong. Orangey red is right here. Opposite of that is bluish green. So yellow, a little bit of yellow, or rather blue and a little bit of yellow. So blue and a little bit of yellow. All right, let's see where we are. Now, which one is darker. We've got to keep our value in check. This mine is too dark, and this is more grayish, which means blue. Mine is still too orange, so we're going to add blue, and we're going to add white to keep our value in check because mine's too dark. So going through this workflow, it might seem tedious at first, but the more you do this will teach you to mix colors. And if I wanted to mix this color and I wasn't doing a demonstration, I could probably mix it in just 2 or 3 little tries, just boom, boom, boom in a minute and a half. And I'm going round and round here to kind of show you the rules and show you how you can always get there. But now, let's look at it again. How do these colors compare? First of all, mine is too light. So I need to darken the value down. And how do I darken that value down? I can add blue or brown or both. In this case, if I compare colors, and I'm running out of room here to compare the color. If I compare the color, mine is too light, so I need to darken it down. Do I want to darken it with blue or brown? Which direction do I want to push the color? Maybe slightly bluish, but it's probably going to need both, otherwise it's going to get too blue, so I'll add a little bit of brown. But if you didn't know to add brown, you'd eventually get there because you would have made it too blue, and then you would have realized that you had to add orange, which is where brown is on the color wheel. Okay, so no matter how long this takes, if you just keep bumping and bumping and bumping, thinking about value first. So now my value's in check because I added that blue to it. Now we're getting real close, and I can say which one is more blue. Mine is very slightly more blue. So I will add just a touch of orange to it. And this is where I got to be careful because now I'm getting real close. So that little bit of orange will bring that blue down even more. And we should be just about there. Real close. Maybe a slight bit more. I would say maybe this one is slightest bit more purpley. It's very hint, or less blue. So maybe even a teeny bit more yellow and a teeny bit more red, which is orange, which is the opposite of blue. And that'll bring my color just about in line, I believe. Close enough, maybe slightly more. And value got off just a little bit. Just a hint of white, probably went overboard there. And I think that's close enough. All right, let's do one more. All right, so now we have this green color here, which is a little different. And we're just going to go through the same workflow. So first, try to mix any color. Maybe try to overshoot it, meaning let's try to mix a really strong green, since this is sort of a greenish color. And we'll mix a green that's perhaps even stronger than that. And now let's compare. So first of all, the value, mine's too dark, so I need to lighten it up. Let's just keep lightening it up with yellow. And now if I compare the value, mine is too bright, so we'll darken it back down with blue. We're just going to stay in the greens, and I can tell that mine's too strong of a green, but we're just going to keep going here and stay without, I'm not adding any red at this point, even though I know that mine's too green, because I first want to kind of get my value close. Well, it's obvious that my green's a little strong. So the opposite of green is red, and if I add red to it, it's going to instantly darken this down and kill the green. And now, and this is a good example to show you, we're going to focus on value first. So even though I'm adjusting this color, my priority is the value. So now if I look at it, mine is too dark. And we've already decided that this is too green. It's still too green. So instead of adding yellow, which is over here on the green side, I'm going to add white, which is going to push it toward the purple or more. So instead of adding yellow, which would only increase the green, this time I'm going to add some white to help my value. So I'm trying to get my value in check. And I'm kind of overshooting this because I want to demonstrate something. But, so this is now I've tried to lighten my color, and now I've made it too light. So I need to darken it down again. So I ask myself, which one is more green? Okay, because we're thinking about value first, but if I want to darken it down, what should I use? And the strength of the green is actually similar. It's just a value problem. So let's just start by adding some blue and stay over here on the green side because I don't want to kill my green anymore. Okay, so in other words, I could have added brown to darken it. Can it darken with blue or brown? I could have added brown, but that would have pushed it in the red direction, and I want to keep the intensity of my green, so instead I used blue to darken it down. And we're just going to go back and forth like this. This will be too dark, but I'm going to, instead of worrying about the color first, I really got to get my value in check. And so that's real close, but maybe slightly too dark. And also mine is a little too strong of a green. So I will add white to lighten it up because I don't want to increase the green anymore. If anything, mine looks too yellow, perhaps. Well, it's hard to say, but let's just kick our value up with some white and just see what we've got. It's going to go back and forth here. So now my value is very slightly too light. So now how do I want to darken that down? If I look at my color, maybe mine's slightly stronger, but let's just darken it down with blue because a little bit of red in that brown is just going to kill this green instantly. And I really am just trying to adjust my value. So I'm just going to add some blue because you're always kind of overshooting. You know, it's a lot easier to dirty up a color than it is to make it more pure. So I'm always overshooting and making my color more intense than it needs to be. Like in this case, you can see that my green is a little too blue-green. So what is the opposite of blue-green? Now we can add some brown, but brown will darken it, so let's just add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red just to take the edge off of that green. And I'm adding orange because it's a blue-green. Blue-green is over here. There's blue-green, and so reddish-orange, which means more yellow than red. So you just, anytime you want to adjust a color, just look at that color wheel and go to the exact opposite side. That means blue-green. The opposite of blue-green is reddish-orange. The opposite of reddish-purple is greenish-yellow. Okay, so just follow the logic. My color looked too blue-green. I needed to get rid of the blue-green, so I'm adding reddish-yellow. Or reddish-orange rather, which is right here, meaning more red than yellow. And those rules will just become so second nature the more you use this system. And it keeps things real simple. Okay, so now our color's getting real close. Mine's still a little too blue-green, and it's perhaps slightly too dark. So a little bit of white and a teeny bit more red. And a little bit of yellow, just a little bit because we're reddish orange. And slightly too dark, so let's lighten it up. Do I want to increase the intensity of the green? Wouldn't hurt. So maybe a little yellow, but a little white too, because I don't want it to get too yellowy. And that's close enough. We could make it slightly more green, but you get the idea. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. That is the workflow that will always get you to a color. Now, there's some other colors that are beyond the reach of these 5 colors, meaning a real intense green like a turquoise green or a brilliant scarlet red. You know, some of these colors that you can go buy specialty tubes for and get these real intense colors that you rarely see in the natural world, except in a traffic cone or a stained glass window, or, you know, there's certainly some times when nature does present those intense colors. But even the colors of almost all flowers you can mix with these colors. There are exceptions. There are some intense purples and intense, oranges perhaps that you can't quite get and you need to go buy a special tube for. But what I do, and I highly encourage you to do the same, is that I use these 5 colors, which gives me a real simple way to match any color that I see. If the color is beyond, let's say I'm trying to mix some intense blue-green, turquoise green, then what I try to do, and this is the important part, is try to mix the colors best I can with these colors. And these colors have fantastic working properties. They're not overly intense. They're not, phthalo blue is really hard to work with, for instance. So therefore, if I'm mixing a blue-green, I'm going to first clean my brush so it has no red in it, no burn umber and no red, because those are the opposite of green. I'm going to clean my brush with some green paint, meaning blue, yellow, and maybe some white, usually some white. If it's a blue-green, it certainly has white in it. But I'm going to clean my brush in that blue-green paint, then I'm going to clean an area on my palette, and I'm only going to use white, blue, and yellow with zero burn umber, zero red in it. And that's going to give me the strongest blue-green. Some balance of those 3 colors is going to give me the strongest blue-green that I can make. And then if I want to boost it beyond that, I get some phthalo blue or some intense turquoise color, and I add just a little bit of that to what I've already got to boost it up to the color that I want. And that way you're using as little of those power colors, which have, don't have the same handling properties or the pigment strength as something that's hard to manage, and you want to use as little of those as possible. So first attempt to mix the color with these 5 and then boost that color up, as opposed to, say, getting a dirty green and then having to add a whole bunch of phthalo blue to overpower the reds and the browns in there. So I hope that, and that goes for, mixing an orange or anything. First try to mix. If you're trying to mix in a real intense orange, attempt to mix it with a clean brush and only red and only yellow. Mix those 2 together, and then if you need to kick it beyond that, go get some cadmium scarlet or whatever and boost your color like that. But that's how you mix colors, and that workflow will always get you there using this very simple color wheel. If you go to drawmixpaint.com, you can find links to all my free videos. If you go to genevafineart.com, you can find out all about the paint that I use to paint with, that I manufacture myself right here in Austin, Texas. And thank you so much for watching.